For those of you who are new here, I have cerebral palsy, major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and ADHD. About 3 years ago, I went in for an autism evaluation, and I actually left that place with an ADHD diagnosis. And a lot of the symptoms, right, tend to overlap. I'm also in graduate school to be a speech therapist, and I've noticed working with kids that a lot of the kids who are on the spectrum, I actually tend to exhibit a lot of the symptoms that they do. And so I decided to go in for a second opinion with a different doctor, with a different psychologist. And today we had the first part of the evaluation, which is just an intake via Zoom. It was about 45 minutes long. He asked me, different questions like, tell me about friendships and relating to other people growing up. What was that like? And he talked about like repetitive behaviors, and I'm assuming that he was alluding to things like stimming. He asked me if I exhibited any of those or if I found myself doing anything like that, right? He asked me about like rigidity, if I tend to be okay when my schedule gets disrupted, or if that affects me. And so, like, what does that look like? He asked me about developmental milestones, as far as I knew when I was younger. Did I meet all my milestones? Did I not meet them? Um, and he asked about like the first thing he asked was like, what brought you into the appointment? What brought you in today? What are you looking for as far as what are you hoping to find? um, and I told him, I have all these diagnoses. Growing up, I did have an IEP in school, an individualized education plan. Um, because of my cerebral palsy, but I feel like there was something else that was missed because I really struggle. I struggle with social interactions. I struggle to drive. I'm 35 and I have not been able to learn to drive despite, paying people to teach me, going to driving school, and renewing my permit, my driver's permit over and over and over again. I just can't seem to get the hang of it. Um, and so that's kind of how it started. And yeah, it was about 45 minutes long. And the second part of the evaluation is going to be an in-person assessment that he said was going to be anywhere between 3 to 4 hours long. And that tells me that's going to be much more comprehensive than the previous evaluation where I met with the other provider 3 years ago. It was about an hour long. But I also think that they're looking for, I told him I also wanted to see if there was anything cognitively going on that was keeping me from being able to drive, because there's a lot of things that I struggle to process and I struggle to understand. So I also wanted him to look at learning disabilities to see if there was anything that was missed. Or is it really just the ADHD, or is there something else there? Because math has always been like my worst nightmare. I, I really struggle to navigate my environment. I get lost everywhere I go. I failed geography when I was taking geography in high school because I really struggled with that. Anything that has to do with directions or talking about where I am, right, in space, spatial awareness. So I told them, like, yes, I want to see about autism and get tested for that. But I also wanted to see if there's anything else that might have been missed. Is there something that's keeping me from learning to drive? Or could it just be the ADHD? I don't know. I have read on like different subreddits that sometimes people with ADHD tend to struggle to learn to drive because they can space out or have, a difficulty focusing on what they need to focus on. Um, but yeah, I thought I would go in to get a second opinion, but actually, today is August 5th, and that second part of the assessment where they're going to be looking, I think he's going to be looking at various different learning disabilities plus the autism, because for it to be a 3 to 4 hour long test, that sounds like a lot. But he did say that we were going to have breaks in between as needed, which is good because I'm not trying to just sit there for 4 hours. Um, but I could tell that the availability is limited because today is August 5th, and they actually didn't give me an appointment till 2 months from now, so October 3rd. That's when I have my in-person appointment, which really sucks because I'm going to start my SLP internship on the 26th of this month, so in a couple of weeks. So I was hoping to have that assessment done and over with by then to see kind of what he thought and what he saw as far as whether my diagnosis is correct or not, or whether I do in fact have autism, right? Whether I'm on the spectrum or whether it's ADHD, because he did talk about how a lot of the symptoms between those two conditions tend to overlap. Uh, and this is something that I kind of knew already. Um, but yeah, I guess we'll see how that goes. I haven't been on here in a while. School's been a little hectic. I stopped working May 30th, so the insurance that I had with my employer is no longer active, and I had to default back to Medicaid, right? Medi-Cal, which is like California insurance, basically, that you get in California. And I looked for a provider that took Medi-Cal, specifically IEHP, and I called them and I made an appointment. That was that. Um, so yeah, I have my internship coming up. I start in a couple weeks. I'm a little nervous about that, even though technically I've already been working as an SLP on a waiver for the past 2 years. I don't know. I still tend to get anxious when it comes to having to meet new people and be in new places and new situations, right? I'll be working um, in a high school for this fall semester coming up. Um, so the majority, if not all, the students will likely be taller than I am because I'm only 4'10". And that's how it is in the past when I've worked with high schoolers and middle schoolers and even some elementary kiddos tend to be taller than me. But anyway, I've also been trying to be more active. I have challenged myself to walk 10,000 steps every single day for the month of August. I don't know if I told you guys this, but last year in the spring I went to Japan, and because a lot of the their transportation system is different, right? So we would take the train basically wherever, um, train or subway. I don't know. One of those, wherever we would need to go, but from one station to the next station, there sometimes is a lot of walking that's involved. So the 1 week that I was in Japan, I would regularly put in anywhere from 10 to 15,000 steps um, with no problem, because there was always so much to see and so much walking that I had to do. So that entire week, I consistently kind of met that goal without even really making it a goal of walking more than 10,000 steps. But I've noticed that life here is much more sedentary and it's not as walkable, right? Especially being that I'm in San Bernardino, which is not the best place to just kind of be walking around in. Um, and most people just rely on their cars, right? And a lot of people, especially I think if you work like an office job or if you're a student, you have to spend a lot of time sitting down in front of a computer, working on reports, homework, and just that's what your job entails, and it's difficult to get those steps in. So I've kind of made it a point to try to walk 10,000 steps daily. I was able to do it August 1st and August 2nd. Um, and then August 3rd, I just couldn't do it because I had to do a lot of sitting because I had reports that I had to finish and I had a project that I had to finish up for school. So most of my day was spent sitting down working on that. So August 3rd, I only got about 4,000 steps in. But yesterday, which was August 4th, and today, yesterday I did get my 10,000 steps in, and today so far I'm at 5,000 steps. So I plan on getting those in. I want to see what that kind of does for my mental health because, as you know, if you've been following my journey, um, I've tried a bunch of medications for the depression, for the ADHD, for the anxiety, and I've heard that exercise tends to give similar benefits. So I have a walking pad that I use to get my steps in, and I walk at a moderate pace, not super fast, moderate pace for someone like me who has a disability and struggles, right? Which moderate pace for me might be slow for somebody else. Um, but yeah, that's my update. I guess that's what I've been up to. I have class in about an hour, so I'm gonna try to go and get some steps in, and then get to class, and that'll be that. I will be back hopefully sooner than later, and definitely I'll be back um, after I get my diagnosis and report from the psychologist.